Elsewhere in Week 14 yesterday, let's hit a number of these games. Ohio State just bounced Michigan State. I don't think I've said that word all year on here, but 52-12. They bounced them. They were down several players, were the Buckeyes. Of course, Ryan Day, the head coach there, had to sit at home. You know what I noticed the most about this game? Aside from Justin Fields playing one of the best games I've seen played this year, all things considered, Ohio State was out 3 offensive linemen, 3 starters, all NFL guys, by the way. And they had guys step in. They had another guy that had to move positions. Snaps were an issue. So that's not ideal. There's some talk about whether they get enough reps for those guys on the second team. But overall, again, circumstances included, really solid showing, I thought, from the Ohio State offensive line when you consider, again, all the factors in play. And sometimes you'll notice this on these big-time programs that recruit like they do. Sometimes it happens with Bama occasionally, like it'll happen with Ohio State. And Georgia will see this happen. You have guys go down, and then someone steps in their place, and the diehard fans know them because they follow recruiting annually. But casual fans, and certainly fans that aren't of that team, they've never heard of them before. So DeJuan Jones just randomly has to step in yesterday. He's only 6'8", 370 pounds, and he's just displacing people all afternoon on the line of scrimmage. And you sit there, and I was reading the Bucknuts board today. I wanted to see if anyone was talking about it. I think I saw Dave Biddle over there say something about it. He said, hold up. All due respect to the guys who were out, does it not look like Jones here may actually be better than the guy he replaced? Just putting it out there. He was a bulldozer of a human being all afternoon. Justin Fields carried a lot of the load. If you didn't see this game, it was kind of weird the way it played out. Some of the bad snap issues, some of the musical chairs on the offensive line early on, it took him a little while to settle in. He ended up having 200 yards passing, 100 yards rushing. He played a much better game than his statistics would indicate. I saw a big drop. There were a couple of big plays called back. I mean, that's why they throw the flag, because probably a hold allowed you to do what you did. But their defense needed this. Ohio State's defense really needed this. When you hear that, they're going to have some guys out, including members of the secondary, and they've already been leaky back there, you think, ooh, Michigan State's not good, but could they even start moving the ball on us? Halftime, 270-80 yards. That was the advantage. They also held the Spartans to 0 of 8 on third down in the first half. That's padlock stat, because when you got a 28-zip lead, if you're not playing Indiana, pretty safe at that point. So congratulations to Larry Johnson. Got a win yesterday as head coach, and now I guess all eyes are on Michigan. I have my doubts as to whether that game's going to be played. The Buckeyes open as a 30.5-point favorite, by the way, so it's kind of got an Alabama-LSU sort of vibe to it. But really where all eyes turn are to the Big Ten commissioner, league office, athletic directors, that kind of group up there, if you will, that's going to ultimately decide if the qualifications aren't met, are we going to change the qualifications? I am on the record as saying I think they will. I think you're going to see that team play for a Big Ten title game. Florida beat Tennessee 31-19. This was pretty much the game we expected. We had that thing sitting at 18, and I think Tennessee scored kind of a garbage time touchdown, and they ended up covering. This was the kind of game that we expected. I mean, I talked about this last week, picked Tennessee to cover, and a lot of you said, there's no way. There's no way they're holding us under 30 or 35. We're going to pull away from them. Florida's just not that much better than Tennessee. When I say that much better, I mean 30 points better. They're just not. I don't know what people have been watching. Florida's a great team. Tennessee is not particularly great this year. But I guess later in the season, there comes to be this inflated sense of the gap between one and the other. I mean, this was going to be a hard-fought game, and it was. And Florida was certainly the better team, and they ended up proving that on the field. But it was another big night for Kyle Trask. It had to be. He was 35 of 49, 433 yards, 4 touchdowns. Florida put up 17 runs, 49 passes. So that was what Dan Mullen thought was necessary, and he was right. I mean, I didn't even write down there. They didn't run the ball very well. Let me just say that. They didn't run the ball worth anything last night. That's normally a stat line. When you run it 17 times and you pass it 49 times, if I didn't give you the resume, if I didn't tell you who that was, what you would think is, that must be a team that got down 21-0 early. They had to abandon the run. Florida wasn't down for long anyway. They weren't down. They can't run the ball very well right now. And I think a lot of Gator fans kind of view that as sort of a terminally low ceiling on their overall opportunity this year. And I don't think you're necessarily wrong about that when you consider the path. You've seen your team right now. Like, you've seen what Kyle Trask is doing. that's a team you want to win the playoff with. I mean, you're not just thinking about winning the division. You're thinking about, let's go be competitive against Alabama and let's take our shot and maybe get in this playoff. When you consider that path, and you've got Alabama and Atlanta, and if you were to win that game, you've got two more to win a championship, two more of Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, like that group of likely playoff contenders. You got to win three of those games, counting the SEC title game in all likelihood. How are you going to do that with no run game? You may beat one of them. You can beat three of them consecutively? You're going to be able to do that? I just don't know. That's really tough to navigate with no offensive balance. So there's no quarterback in the country doing more than Kyle Trask right now. When you consider the fallback option of Najee Harris at Alabama, Ohio State ran the ball 300-plus yards yesterday. Like these other teams, they got fallback options. You got Travis Etienne at Clemson. They just don't have that at Florida, and it could be ultimately their undoing. Cal beat Oregon yesterday, and we didn't really have any action on this game. I didn't talk about it a whole lot. Oregon, I think, was a 9.5-point favorite, and I guess this is a good time to remind everyone that pound for pound, Oregon has one of the youngest teams in America. Now, they're not paying me to say this tonight, but they are one of the youngest teams in America. It's been a really bad 2-week stretch. There's no other way to state this. They lost to Oregon State last week in the middle of a fog storm, I guess you would call it. And then they are in what should be a get-right game as about a double-digit favorite against Cal and just can't get it done. And these are games you have to win. There is no beating around the bush. You got a much better roster than both of these teams. These are games you have to win. And yet, if you think total yardage tells the whole story of a football game, it would really be confusing right now because they keep outgaining teams. They keep on, in some categories that people would call critical, surpassing that of their opponent. But yet then you look down the box score a little bit and you see that yet again this week, Oregon minus in the turnover battle, -2 this week. They had 9 more penalties for 60 yards. And these are just the sorts of things you can't really quantify what they were worth against you and for your opponent, but keeps piling up and it keeps turning into a loss. And the worst thing about yesterday, if you're Oregon, is the script kind of flipped. We were talking so far this year about how we expected their offense to be a problem, defense to be good. Yet so far this year, offense had been really clicking. Even with first-year coordinator Joe Moorhead, like things have been clicking. The defense had been MIA. All of a sudden, defense shows up yesterday. Okay, they have a very, very good overall game. I would rate it like a B, B+, and by Oregon standards, it would be an A or an A+ relative to what they haven't done defensively so far this year. But in the second half of this game, they got shut out. First off, Oregon got shut out. If I were to tell you, let's just say Oregon leads at halftime. Let me tell you how bad this was in the second half. I tell you, Oregon leads at the half, 17-14 is your lead. And in the second half, you're going to hold Cal to 103 total yards, and you're going to hold them to 1 of 9 on third down, and you're still going to lose. How in the world does that happen? Like, think about the minimum baseline requirement at that point. You're going to hold them to 100 yards, 1 of 9 on third down. What do you need? You need like a field goal or something like that? They couldn't even get that. And so Oregon goes down, and they're looking for a complete game, man. I'm not so sure, as bad as things look there at the moment, I'm not so sure this may not be a team that we end up betting on. Maybe this week, but maybe down the stretch, because certainly there's a lot of intrinsic value there. But it's also one of those where at times you've seen both sides of the ball for them put in really good performances. Normally, a good team and a good roster does not go a whole year without having at least one game where those two jive and they click. Hadn't happened for Oregon yet. Kind of want to have your money on them when it does. Iowa State defeated soundly not Western. Well, it was the western portion of Virginia, West Virginia yesterday, 42-6. So I got some words written down here, and this is personal for me, so I just want to read these words. Shame, embarrassment, humiliation, inferiority, unworthiness, and ultimately regret. These are some of the emotions that were in plentiful supply in my heart yesterday when I realized that I had bet against the Iowa State Cyclones and they were making me pay for it. A week after the Texas win, a week after they pretty much clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship game, and yet here I am thinking that, well, it wasn't my fault, it was the model's fault. The model thought that West Virginia was going to walk in there and give them a scare, and not so much. In fact, they were so thoroughly in control of this, they were drawing up specific touchdown plays to their seniors. It was senior day yesterday by the second quarter. Guys who haven't caught a touchdown pass their entire career, it was like it was a spring game. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing for West Virginia, and it was embarrassing for me. Important point number one, Iowa State controlled the line of scrimmage. They have done that at times all year. They really limited the run. And important point number two that's going to matter when it comes to the Big 12 championship game is Brock Purdy, who feels like he's been around 27 years at this point. He's playing the best football, I think, over the past few weeks of his entire career. You could really say that. Think about this stat here. I saw Michael Swain mention this on Cyclone Alert, which is our 24/7 Sports Iowa State site, which I would encourage you to peruse at your leisure. Listen to these stats, man. Over the past, since halftime of the Baylor game, Brock Purdy is 70 of 91 for 903 yards, 10 touchdowns, no interceptions. Can we beat Oklahoma? I think we can. Will we? Stay tuned. Indiana did beat Wisconsin 14-6. We sat here, and I would love to tell you we took flack for it. We didn't, but we also didn't take credit for it. We sat here last week on the set, and Colin and I were the brave souls that went ahead and told you, don't worry about Michael Penix being out. Don't even worry about it. Like they had the freshest image of Indiana football in your mind was, oh, they went into the horseshoe. They had this magical comeback, almost beat Ohio State. They had the ball with a chance to tie the game, but that quarterback that orchestrated all that, well, he's out now. And so, too, are the hopes and dreams of Indiana football. And we told you, Colin, I remember it just like it was, 5-6 days ago, told you, there's a kid, and his name's Jack Tuttle, and he's the backup quarterback for Indiana. He's not your average backup quarterback for Indiana, whatever that means. He's a really good football player. We think they're going to be fine. Like, they were a 14-point underdog. I went on Mark Ryan's show on ESPN Upstate and just picked them to win outright. We certainly had them as one of our best bets against the number last week, and sure enough, they won the game outright, 14-6. The temperature was 1 degree in this game, by the way. Maybe the cold weather snuck up on Wisconsin. No, I'll tell you what snuck up on Wisconsin is they're gutted. They are a shell of the team that we expected in the preseason. They got a lot of guys out, so this is not a Badger squad that's firing on all cylinders. That's not the story, though. Indiana being 6-1 is the story. It was really fun to watch. They got enough out of the run game, which was a concern. You worried that they were going to have one of those 13 rushes for 17 yards types of days. No, they ran it for 87. Tuttle was 13 of 22, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0. Goose egg in the interception column. And Tom Allen after the game, I don't know if you guys saw it, but boy, if you haven't, just go search Tom Allen video. I don't know if you're on Google, search it on Twitter. Just Tom Allen post-game. He's right there on the field. He's giving his post-game remarks. And there's a lot of money in recruiting budgets. One of the funnest columns that we do here every year is which program spends the most on its recruiting budget. And you're spending money to put an idea in kids' minds. But here's the best recruiting ammo that you could ever have, and it was free of charge yesterday. It got delivered to Indiana. Tom Allen's there on the field. This guy's universally adored and respected by players and by people in the sport. And he's doing his post-game press availability on the field. And his team is walking off the field right behind him. Their tunnel's right there, microphone's right here. And he can't even finish his interview because his players keep coming up and recruiting just real time into the microphone for Tom Allen and Indiana, telling them, come here. We love this dude. He loves us. Great environment. No better place, no better coach to play for in America. And I'm just sitting there thinking the whole time, how much was that just worth? It feels like it was worth like $10 million. And Tom Allen, the way he accomplished it is, just be yourself. And being yourself with Tom Allen sure has worked. They are the second best team in the Big Ten. More and more, I heard some people start to make this point yesterday, and they're right. More and more, you look at how solid Indiana is now with their backup quarterback, and you say, it seems like not too long ago we were kind of chirping at Ohio State for almost giving that game away. It turns out they were playing a pretty darn good team in Indiana. Maybe shouldn't have taken that long to figure that out. As for other goings-on around the country yesterday, Coastal Carolina beat Brigham Young, not BU, Brigham Young, 22-17. The inside story there is I cannot properly pronounce Y's, so I don't do it on the show. Brigham Young falls. They get a game with about 72 hours heads up. They go on the road. Equipment Truck made it, which was number one mild upset for this game. And then number two, Coastal Carolina beats them, which was a little bit bigger upset as a 10-point underdog. There was a great ending to this game. Okay, a lot of greatness, okay? So let me tell you, there was a great ending. It was a great concept that this game came together. Coastal Carolina and Jamie Chadwell, it's a great story. Great message, great fortitude. And then I want to do something that I wish more of you would do. I'm going to take this pen, and I am going to put a period at the end of that sentence. And that's all I have to say. I am not taking the added step of saying, and this team should be in the playoff, because they shouldn't. Shouldn't be in the playoff, shouldn't be in the playoff conversation. You know my feelings on this. I think it is ludicrous to, again, let me reiterate what I said. A lot of greatness, love the story. I've watched not every Coastal game, but several of their games this year. I am all for it, right down to the color of the field. Teal is one of my favorite colors, by the way. And so I love everything about it. This is a much broader point than Coastal. I have long considered the concept of G5 teams and Power 5 teams competing for the same playoff spots to be absurd. They're not playing the same sport. The quality year in and year out and strength of schedule on a G5 team versus a P5 team schedule is night and day. They're not playing the same sport. So let's not pretend they are. Because here's what would be really fun right now. What would be really fun is if we were heading into December and I knew that Coastal was about to be the number one seed in the G5 playoff, and then I was going to have Napier down at Louisiana, and I was going to get these teams that, UCF in the past, Houston, Memphis in the past, Cincinnati was going to be in this thing. That I wouldn't have to pay for it. They'd probably put it on TV, but I would pay a lot of money. I would invest a lot of my energy in watching that. I'm not going to sit here and even pretend like I want to know what would happen if the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers drew the University of Alabama in the first round of the playoff. You don't need to see that. I don't need to see that. And please spare me this talk about how college basketball makes it happen. Yeah. Let me tell you something else college basketball makes happen. They make this happen too. They make it possible for the number one team and number two team in the country to be scheduled, have the game canceled, and me not even realize it until 24 hours later. That happened yesterday. I forgot Gonzaga and somebody. They were supposed to play yesterday. Kentucky, I just found out, lost today to Colin, who was it, Georgia Tech? Yeah, they lost to Georgia Tech today. I wouldn't have even known if Colin told me. You know why? Because that tournament you all love so much, and I do too, has rendered the other 11 months worth of college basketball talk, build up, and play irrelevant to people like me. And so I would prefer not to see that happen in college football. That's why I'm not for expansion. I'm not for inclusion of everybody from every corner of the country. No, you give me the best, you set out the criteria, and then you decide, and there's going to be some subjectivity in there, and I understand that, but I think pretty much every one of us is in agreement. No, I don't think that team could compete with Ohio State. And no, I don't think I need to see it to have it proven. There's nothing magical about that. There's nothing special about that. Nothing at all. You are shaving away at the overall value of the regular season, which is the most priceless commodity in the college football inventory, and you're doing it for what? To appease? I don't know what you're doing it for, because I am not of the opinion that just because some folks are upset about something, it means something's wrong. Folks can be upset. It's not going to kill them. It's not the worst thing in the world. But no, I'm not for that. So I know it makes me, as everyone else wants to be Santa Claus, handing out playoff tickets. You can call me the Grinch if you want to. That is not what college football needs. If you want to argue G5 playoff, I'll beat that drum with you all day. But no. On the other side of the coin, no.